Hello and welcome. This is the Writing Diary and my name is Tiia and I am talking about getting back into writing after a 15-year hiatus. Last week we talked about the urge of getting published and I talked about how I did some research on what I need to do in order to get my foot in the door with publishers or in general to be seen. One of the options that I found last week was the option to enter short stories for contests or for anthologies. And last week after I did the podcast, I actually decided to just submit a short story. After thinking about it for a while, I felt like it was the easiest and the lowest barrier for me to get in touch with publishers and to basically show what I can do. But I can tell you, it was really hard to find a good fit for my writing because there were so many different contests and I really had to go through all of them to see which one would apply for me because there were so many restrictions. Some were location restrictions, some were age restrictions, which I totally understand. Sometimes you just want to push young writers and you want to have a young writer contest. And I'm not young anymore, so I do not fit into that young writer category anymore. And then there were topics that really didn't interest me. There were contests for genres or about things that I really don't care about or I don't really burn for. And then there were also a lot of contests that from itself already excluded anything horror or darker topics. And then we had like this one very weird case where the whole contest was kind of AI. And the crazy part about it was that in the contest rules, it said you're not allowed to use AI in any shape or form possible. And if you enter anything with AI, you get disqualified also for future contests. And then they showed the preview of the book where they're going to publish the stories and the title cover was fully AI generated. And I was like, that like either you don't know or that is insanely tone deaf. But I excluded those from my choice as well. And then I saw, of course, some of the contests where they wanted you to pay for entering, which I talked about last week. No, I'm not going to do this. And I think that's a very weird way of making money. But I was lucky and I found a small publisher with a topic that probably wouldn't have been something that I would have written about on my own, but that somehow still fell into my interests. But it still felt like I had to get out of my comfort zone. And comfort zone, who is she? The one thing that I have noticed, and I have noticed this in a positive, very good way, is that when you are forced to write outside of your cozy space, then it can be very motivating and very inspiring. And it feels really refreshing because it requires you to think outside of the box that you feel comfortable in. And sometimes just having to think under specific limitations is all it needs for you to have the spark of writing lit up. I cannot talk too much about the story or about the topic because I don't know if it will get published or not. It required to be an original idea, and until I know what's happening with the story, I'm just, keeping my mouth shut. Even if it doesn't get published, I still can publish the story later on my own channels. But I will have to wait until October because that's the deadline, and until October, I have to wait. The funny thing is, after I did this short story and it went really easy for me, I figured I plan on doing more contests. I already have found 4 or 5 that would go into my interest or my area of interest, and they're all different publishers and different organizers. It is just 4 or 5 despite me finding 50, because I want to be picky. I want to choose stories that I really care for and stories that I don't mind seeing my name connected with over stories I just write to have them written. Because I don't want to mass produce text I don't care about just to raise my chances. That doesn't feel like something I should do. Because for me, it is not really about winning or losing, because it would be nice to get the story published. I'm not gonna lie. It would be nice to get an okay and get in, sign of approval that someone liked my story enough to put it into a book. But in the end, joining those contests gives me one thing, and that is experience. Experience to follow a story idea that was not my own, or to follow a topic that was not my own, and just being able to put my craft and my skill into this topic regardless. For me, it's like every text I write, no matter if I finish it or not, or if I publish it or not, it is me training my skill. And I always compare this to, because, being a millennial, I always compare it to, when you play The Sims. I mean, some of you probably have played The Sims. So if you play The Sims, then especially when you go into the writer-author career, you start with writing children's books. You write children's book until you get to the next category, then you write the next book. And in the end, you end up, or if you're very resistant, you end up as a bestseller author. But every single time you sit down and you write, your skill bar goes up. And it's the same in real life. Like every time I write, it doesn't matter what I do with the text afterwards, but every time I write, I learn. And every time I approach an idea, I learn how to approach the idea. I learn how to research the idea. I learn what to do with the things in my head and how to get them on paper or digital paper. And that is what matters for me. I want to become better. I want to be more skilled, and I want to be more confident in my skills. And I think the only way of doing this is by first writing, and second of all, putting myself out, and also getting negative feedback, or having people say like, I really don't like this, or I really don't like your idea, or I think you did not discover or approach the idea the way I would have liked it. And every feedback in itself is valuable for me as a writer. Like I said in the last episode, I was in journalism before, and I can tell you one thing: being in journalism and working with a lot of very established journalists, they are not nice to you. If you write something, they are not nice. They will tell you in your face what they don't like, but not because they want to put you down or because they see you as competition and want to kill your spark. It is more because they want to see you succeed. They want your text and your article to be the best article possible. And sometimes it needs a little bit of tough love, and sometimes it needs a little bit of harsher words than usual. But then you end up with an article you are 100% proud of. And for the next time, you remember those words. And so getting this tough love definitely was something I had to get used to. But in that time, I made and wrote articles that even today I am 100% proud of. And I 100% think that is some of the best work I have done in my whole writing career. But what are now the things that I have actually learned doing writing the short story for the contest? First of all, the contest was character limits, so I had to really hold back to go too much into detail, which I love to do. Sometimes I get carried away by really describing the area, feelings, and impressions people have. And I had to keep an eye on pushing the story. I couldn't have like a 3-page description about my main character's thought. And pushing the story, I told you before, pushing a story is like one of the things I really need to get better at. The way I approached it was to fully outline the story before. There was no way around it. And I don't have the time to develop the ideas while I was writing, because being like limited to about 2,000, 3,000 words, if I like calculate it back from the characters to words, I needed to know every detail beforehand, because writing 2,000, 3,000 words is really, it doesn't take that much time. Of course, I could do small changes on the go, but for every big plot change or every big plot idea, I needed to know this beforehand in order to be able how to build this up. Second of all, I had to write in German, because all the contests here are for German publishers, so you have to write in German. And since most of my stories these days are in English, this reminded me how much bigger my vocabulary in German is. It was like kind of crazy, because when I write in English, I always have to think in German, translate it, and make it sound like a native speaker has said it. And this is the hardest part. So writing in English usually takes me twice as long than writing in German. And like this experience, and I think everyone who speaks at least a second language or more languages probably knows this. If you speak your second language a lot and then you go back to your first language, you have this, oh my God, I kind of sound smart when I have a bigger vocabulary, like this effect. And I had this, which was kind of funny because it's not the first time I felt like that, but it was very funny. And it was definitely giving me a lot of energy to push through this text. And one thing I noticed, it was definitely more relaxing to write in German than in English because it just comes naturally to me. It's more relaxing and I could write faster and I could write more. Putting yourself out, though, can have risks. And I was very aware of the risks beforehand. Some of the risks are, of course, it could be that they don't like it. It could be that I just entered a story that I'm like really proud of, and I think it's like one of the best things I've done. And then I just hear back that they don't like it, and then I have to face that maybe the way I see my story is not the way other people see my story. But that is fine, because showing your work to someone else is always making you vulnerable. And the best thing to approach this is to know that it makes you vulnerable, and that no matter what feedback you get, it does not say anything about you as a person, because those people don't know you, so they don't judge you as a person. And one thing I think has helped me quite a lot getting to this mindset is working as a content creator in a fairly toxic environment for the past 12 years. But when I look into the future, aside from entering into the next relevant contest, I want to finish my cosmic horror story. I'm close to the finish of the story, like very close. And the plans that I have for it, I can talk about in one of the next future episodes because I am still planning. But now up to you. What is your way to pull yourself out of your comfort zone? What are your steps that you go in order to go forward and not step on the same spot for the whole time? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll be here in the next episode. Goodbye.